Chapter 1: The Scholar and the Athlete. The university bustled with energy as students shuffled between classes, their conversations blending into an indistinct hum. Amidst the organized chaos, Sam meticulously followed his schedule, navigating the hallways with purpose. His notebook was clutched tightly against his chest, its pages filled with precise notes and color-coded highlights. In contrast, Eric strode through the corridor with his usual easy confidence, a basketball spinning on his fingertips as he exchanged casual nods with passing teammates. His backpack hung loosely off one shoulder, and somewhere in its depths was a barely legible notebook crammed with scribbled class notes. The two had little reason to interact. Sam, the epitome of academic excellence, lived by structure and logic. Eric, the heart of the basketball team, thrived in spontaneity and instinct. Yet, fate, or perhaps a mere quirk of scheduling, had placed them in the same elective class, understanding the subconscious. Inside the lecture hall, Sam took his usual seat in the front row, aligning his notebook and pen parallel to the edge of the desk. Eric, arriving moments before the lecture began, dropped into an empty seat near the back, casually flipping open his tattered notebook. "All right, class," Professor Daniel began, adjusting his glasses. "This semester we'll be diving into the workings of the subconscious mind. But before we begin, let's conduct a little experiment. Who here believes in fate?" A murmur spread through the students. Some raised their hands confidently, others hesitated. Eric, smirking, lifted his hand halfway. Sam, predictably, kept his arms crossed, unimpressed. "Fascinating," Daniel noted, his eyes scanning the room. "Now, who has heard of the legend of the Window of Destiny?" Eric perked up, exchanging a glance with a teammate sitting a few rows ahead. Sam, on the other hand, sighed softly, already tuning out what he presumed to be a frivolous discussion. "Ah, so some of you have," Daniel continued, pacing slightly. "Every year on the spring equinox night, those who stand before the window in room 459 are said to glimpse their destined future. Some claim to see a stranger who later becomes their soulmate. Others see themselves, which sparks endless speculation about its meaning. And how exactly does that relate to subconscious thought?" Sam asked, his voice calm but pointed. Daniel smiled. "Good question, Sam. The legend itself is rooted in the power of perception and belief. Whether the window truly shows destiny or whether it merely reflects one's inner fears and desires, well, that is for you to explore." Later that evening, the campus radio crackled to life. Felix's voice, smooth and familiar, filled the airwaves. "Welcome to Night Talk. Tonight's topic, fate versus free will. We've all heard the tale of the Window of Destiny, but does it really show the future, or is it just our subconscious messing with us? Call in and let's hear your thoughts." Eric, stretching after a late-night practice, chuckled as he listened through his earbuds. "Man, people really eat this stuff up." His teammate Justin smirked. "You should try it, Eric. Maybe you'll see your true calling as a scholar." "Haha, very funny," Eric retorted, tossing a towel at him. Meanwhile, Sam sat in his dorm, the radio playing in the background as he reviewed his notes. He had never paid much attention to campus folklore, but tonight something about the legend stuck with him. Maybe it was Daniel's challenge, or perhaps Felix's teasing invitation over the airwaves. But for the first time, he found himself wondering, what would he see if he stood before that window? Little did he know, someone else was asking themselves the very same question. Chapter 2: The Window of Destiny. The campus was unusually quiet that evening. Most students had already left after the day's classes, leaving only a few stragglers scattered around the grounds. Among them was Sam, seated alone at a desk in the library, methodically reviewing his notes. The glow of his laptop screen reflected off his glasses as he adjusted them, scanning the lines of text for any errors. His structured schedule rarely allowed for deviations, but tonight was different. He had volunteered to assist a professor with a late academic event, meaning he would be on campus much later than usual. With his obligations finished, he decided to take a walk, allowing himself a rare moment of spontaneity. As he wandered through the corridors of the university, a murmur from a passing group of students caught his attention. The window of destiny. People say if you look into it at the right time, you see your fated person. One of them whispered excitedly. Sam had heard the stories before. The legend had resurfaced recently thanks to a late-night radio show hosted by Felix, who loved feeding the campus with strange rumors. According to the latest discussions, room 459 in the comprehensive building held a mysterious window that, on the night of the spring equinox, revealed the face of one's destined person if they looked into it. Sam scoffed at the idea. Destiny was nothing but a convenient excuse for the unpredictable outcomes of life. He lived by logic and careful planning, not by arbitrary superstitions. Yet, despite himself, he found his feet unconsciously carrying him toward the comprehensive building. Meanwhile, across campus, Eric slung his bag over his shoulder as he strolled down the pathway leading to the same building. He had been hanging out with Justin and Kai after practice, and somehow, their conversation had shifted to the ridiculous legend of the so-called window of destiny. "You seriously believe in that crap?" Eric had laughed, tossing a basketball between his hands. Justin smirked, stretching his arms over his head. "It's not about believing it. It's about the thrill of it. What if you actually see someone? Wouldn't that mess with your head?" Kai nudged Eric playfully. "Come on, just try it. What's the harm?" Eric rolled his eyes but, with a shrug, let himself be dragged along. If nothing else, it would be a funny story to tell later. Sam arrived at room 459 first. The hallway was dimly lit, and the quiet hum of the air conditioning filled the space. He hesitated briefly before stepping inside. The room was empty except for a few desks and chairs, and at the far end, a large window overlooked the darkened campus. He approached cautiously, gripping his notebook tightly. Just one glance, he told himself. One look to prove this was all nonsense. Taking a deep breath, he looked into the glass. His own reflection stared back at him. He frowned. Wasn't the legend supposed to show him someone else? A fated person? His brow furrowed as he leaned closer, as if doing so would reveal something new. But no. There was only himself, the same sharp features and tired eyes that he saw in every mirror. A strange unease settled in his stomach. He quickly turned away, brushing off the feeling as sleep deprivation. Adjusting his glasses, he scribbled a note in his book and made his way toward the door. At the same time, Eric and his friends reached the comprehensive building, laughing as they climbed the stairs to room 459. "All right, let's get this over with," Eric said, pushing open the door. He walked straight to the window without hesitation, standing exactly where the legend dictated. "Here goes nothing," he muttered, peering into the glass. And then he blinked. It was his own face looking back at him. His amusement faltered. "Huh? What?" Justin asked, stepping closer. Eric turned to them with an incredulous expression. "It's just me. I don't see anyone else." Kai chuckled. "Guess you're your own soulmate, man." Justin burst into laughter. "Damn, that means you're stuck with yourself forever. That's rough, buddy." Eric scowled, shoving him lightly. "Shut up." Still, as they left the room, he couldn't shake the nagging thought in his mind. Why had he seen himself? He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Whatever. It wasn't like he actually believed in this stuff anyway. As he and his friends left the building, neither he nor Sam realized that, at some point that night, they had walked past each other in the hallway, each deep in thought about the odd reflection they had seen. And in their hands, their respective notebooks carried a strange, unseen energy, quietly awaiting the moment they would be exchanged. Chapter 3. The Accidental Exchange. The first thing Sam noticed when he woke up was that something felt off. The dorm room was unfamiliar, scattered with basketball jerseys, sports magazines, and a desk cluttered with loose notes filled with barely legible handwriting. He sat up abruptly, realizing the bed was bigger, the room messier, and he froze. The reflection in the mirror across the room wasn't his. Instead of his neatly combed black hair and sharp glasses, he saw a disheveled head of brown hair, a face that was definitely not his own, and a build that looked far more athletic than the one he was used to. His hands trembled as he reached for his face. The touch was real. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. Meanwhile, across campus, Eric was having an equally horrifying realization. The neat, minimalist dorm room with a shelf full of engineering textbooks was not his. The bed was smaller. The air smelled faintly of peppermint. And when he glanced down at himself, he saw hands that weren't his own, slimmer, more delicate. What the? He bolted out of bed and ran to the mirror. The face staring back at him was unmistakably Sam's. No. No, 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 no. The phone buzzed. Is his number. He answered. Hello, Eric. The voice was his own. Silence stretched between them. Sam, I think we need to talk. Now. They met in an empty classroom, where it was quiet enough for them to process whatever was happening without drawing attention. Sam, now in Eric's body, had his arms crossed, looking eerily calm given the circumstances. Eric, on the other hand, was pacing back and forth, still in a state of denial. This isn't real. This isn't real. This isn't real, Eric muttered under his breath. Sam sighed. I wish it weren't. How did this happen? Eric ran his hands through his, Sam's hair. Did we get cursed or something? Did I eat something weird last night? Sam adjusted Eric's sleeves. I don't believe in curses, but we need to consider what we did differently in these days. They both paused. The window of destiny. They had both looked into it, and they had both seen themselves. That's ridiculous, Eric said weakly. More ridiculous than waking up in each other's bodies? Sam shot back. Fair point. Eric exhaled sharply and shook his head. Okay. But wait. Also the notebooks. His eyes widened. We switched notebooks when we submitted our classwork. You had mine and I had yours. Sam frowned. You think that's connected? Eric pulled Sam's notebook out of his bag. It's the only thing we physically exchanged. Sam reached into his bag and pulled out the other notebook. They hesitated, then simultaneously handed them back to each other. Nothing happened. Eric clenched his jaw. Well, that's just great. Sam flipped open his notebook, scanning the pages. If the notebooks were the key, maybe there's something written inside that we missed. They flipped through the pages, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. No mysterious messages. No glowing symbols. Just their usual notes. Eric's chaotic scribbles and Sam's methodical annotations. After a long silence, Eric groaned. So we're stuck like this? For now. For now. Eric stared at Sam. You're handling this way too well. How are you not panicking? Sam exhaled. Because panicking won't solve anything. If we can't switch back immediately, our only choice is to act normal until we figure out a solution. Eric buried his face in his hands. Act normal? Dude, I don't even know how to be you. Well, you're going to have to learn. Quickly. Sam adjusted Eric's hoodie. And I'll have to learn to be you. Eric let out a strangled laugh. Oh man, this is gonna be a disaster. Sam gave him a flat look. Then let's make sure it isn't. Eric groaned. Fine, but if you mess up my free throws, we're gonna have a problem. Sam smirked. And if you mess up my GPA, we're going to have a bigger problem. They stared at each other for a long moment, realizing just how complicated this was going to be. We're so screwed, Eric muttered. Sam nodded. Yes, we are. Chapter 4. The scholar in the athlete's body and the athlete in the scholar's body. The gymnasium buzzed with the sounds of sneakers squeaking against polished wood and basketballs bouncing against the floor. Sam, now in Eric's body, tried his best to keep up, but his lack of coordination was glaringly obvious. Kai dribbled past him with ease, scoring another basket. Dude, what's up with you today? He asked, eyebrows furrowed. You're moving like a malfunctioning robot. I didn't sleep well, Sam muttered, wiping his forehead. He attempted another dribble, but the ball awkwardly bounced off his foot and rolled away. Justin picked it up, grinning. Man, you play like you've never touched a basketball before. Sam forced a laugh. Just off my game today. Kai shot him a skeptical look before motioning for him to get back in position. Sam exhaled, trying to recall all the basketball theories he had read about. Unfortunately, knowing something in theory didn't translate into execution. After another disastrous play, Matt, the team coach, finally blew his whistle. Eric, what the hell was that? Sam scrambled for an excuse. Just a bad day, coach. Matt sighed, rubbing his temple. Go take a water break and get your head together. Meanwhile, in the engineering building, Eric, stuck in Sam's body, was enduring his own personal nightmare. Professor Daniel was scribbling a complex equation on the board, and Eric could barely make sense of it. So, using the Laplace transform, we can simplify this differential equation into... Eric tuned out. What the hell is a Laplace transform? He glanced at Brian and Felix, who were scribbling notes effortlessly. When Professor Daniel turned to him expectantly, Eric panicked. Yeah, that makes total sense. Brian gave him a side glance. Felix outright frowned. Since when do you say, in class? Felix whispered. Eric forced a stiff smile. Just trying a new speech pattern. Felix didn't look convinced. Brian nudged him. He's probably tired. Let's focus. Eric barely survived the rest of the lecture. As soon as class ended, he bolted out of the room, massaging his temples. I'm so screwed. Later that evening, Sam and Eric met in the empty classroom. This isn't working, Eric groaned, dropping his head onto a desk. I don't understand a single thing in your classes. Oh, you think you've got it bad? Sam shot back. I nearly got kicked off the team for playing like a beginner. Eric sighed, rubbing his temples. Okay, we need a plan. We can't keep failing at each other's lives. Sam hesitated before nodding. We need to help each other. Eric blinked. Wait, you mean? You teach me basketball, and I'll teach you enough engineering to survive, Sam clarified. Eric groaned. I don't think my brain is wired for that stuff. And my body isn't wired for basketball, Sam pointed out. But we don't have a choice. That night, they sneaked into the gymnasium. The court was empty, bathed in dim lighting. Eric, still in Sam's body, crossed his arms. All right, let's start with the basics. He dribbled the ball easily. Loosen up. Your shoulders are too stiff. Sam mimicked the motion but fumbled again. This is impossible. Relax, Eric chuckled. You're thinking too much. Of course I am. That's what I do. Eric shook his head. All right, let's simplify. Just focus on the rhythm. He moved beside Sam, guiding his hands. Feel the ball. Don't fight it. Sam followed his movements. After a few failed attempts, he finally managed a decent dribble. Hey, that wasn't terrible. Eric grinned. See? Progress. The next evening, it was Sam's turn to teach. He set up a whiteboard in his dorm room and motioned for Eric to sit. Eric slumped onto the chair. I hate this already. Sam rolled his eyes. We're starting simple. He wrote a formula on the board. This is the foundation for solving the equations in class. Eric stared at the symbols like they were ancient runes. Sam, my dude. None of this makes sense. Sam sighed. Okay. Let's put it in basketball terms. He grabbed a marker. Imagine this function is your shooting angle. You need to adjust it based on the defense. Eric blinked. Wait. So it's like adjusting your aim depending on the opponent? Exactly. Eric nodded slowly. All right, that actually makes a little sense. Sam smirked. Told you. As the days went by, their secret lessons continued. Sam was still far from being a basketball star, and Eric wasn't about to become a math genius overnight, but they were improving. Chapter 5. Living each other's lives. All right, man, you ready? Justin clapped a hand on Sam's back. Eric's back, technically. You looked way better at practice yesterday. I'm starting to think that whole forgot how to play stunt was just you messing with us. Sam chuckled nervously, adjusting the hem of his jersey. His muscles ached from the intense training sessions, but there was a strange satisfaction in pushing his body to its limits. In his real life, everything had been about mental endurance. Acing exams, perfecting assignments. But physical endurance? That was entirely new. He jogged onto the court, feeling the beat of the bouncing basketball echo in his chest. The energy, the camaraderie, it was different from the solitary grind of studying. Eric, quit daydreaming and get in position. Kai's sharp voice cut through the gym. Sam rushed into place, catching a pass from Justin. His fingers tingled at the touch of the ball. Dribbling still felt awkward, but he could see the game better now, the patterns of movement, the logic behind the plays, like a puzzle waiting to be solved. And when he finally made a decent pass, when his teammates cheered, it felt good. Meanwhile, Eric sat hunched over Sam's laptop in the library, staring at the AI coding problem Felix had assigned. "This makes no sense," he muttered, rubbing his temples. Felix, who had been watching him like a hawk, raised an eyebrow. "You've never struggled with this kind of problem before. You sure you're okay? Just tired." It wasn't a complete lie. Eric was exhausted mentally this time, but something strange had happened while he was working through the equations. He was interested, not just in finishing the work to keep up Sam's reputation, but in actually understanding how the AI system functioned. It was like breaking down a basketball play, except instead of players, he was maneuvering data points. The realization unsettled him. Was this what Sam found fulfilling? The quiet thrill of solving a problem others couldn't. Felix tapped the screen. "You're close, but you made an error here." Eric followed Felix's explanation, and for the first time it clicked. Felix didn't voice it out loud, but something was off about Sam. His best friend had never struggled with AI before, and yet here he was needing help. Meanwhile, on the court, Justin leaned toward Kai. "Dude, Eric's playing better, but doesn't he seem kinda different lately?" Kai shrugged. "I mean, everyone has off days." Justin hummed, unconvinced. "Yeah, but his whole vibe is weird." Later that night, Sam and Eric sat in the empty classroom, notebooks spread between them. The room was quiet except for the occasional scribble of a pen. "I think Felix is catching on," Eric admitted. "He kept staring at me like I'd grown two heads." "Same with Justin," Sam sighed. "I don't know how much longer we can keep this up." Silence stretched between them. Neither of them wanted to admit that keeping this up wasn't entirely awful. Sam leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "You know, it's kinda crazy, but I think I actually like playing basketball." Eric smirked. "And I don't hate AI as much as I thought I would." Sam turned his head to look at him. "What if we had lived our lives differently from the start?" Eric hesitated, then grinned. "Well, I guess we're kind of finding out now, aren't we?" Chapter 6. The Growing Attraction. Sam had never been the type to bond with large groups. Study sessions were usually quiet, solitary affairs, and social interactions were often limited to Brian and Felix. But now, surrounded by the energy of the basketball team, he found himself swept up in their camaraderie. "Yo, Eric, finally keeping up." "Huh." Justin smirked, tossing Sam a towel after practice. Sam wiped the sweat from his forehead, his arms aching from the repeated drills. "Yeah, well, I had a good teacher," he admitted, thinking of Eric's late-night coaching sessions. Kai threw an arm around Sam's shoulders. "You're actually passing the ball instead of just shooting half-court threes. This is growth." Sam rolled his eyes. "Was I really that bad before?" Justin and Kai exchanged knowing glances. "Let's just say we're relieved you stopped playing like a solo act," Justin teased. "You're more of a team player now." Something about that struck Sam. He had always worked alone, thinking teamwork was inefficient and unnecessary in his world of academics. But here, amidst the team, he felt included. Meanwhile, Eric was shocking everyone in the classroom. At first, he had fumbled through lectures, relying on sheer luck to answer questions. But after weeks of being tutored by Sam and Felix and poring over Sam's well-organized notes, something clicked. "Sam, that was an impressive breakdown of the AI logic model," Professor Daniel remarked during their seminar. Eric scratched the back of his neck. Thanks, Professor." Brian leaned over, eyeing Eric suspiciously. Dude, what happened to you? What do you mean? Brian gestured toward his notebook. You used to write like a machine, just formulas and rigid notes. Now you're explaining things in a way that actually makes sense to normal people. Felix narrowed his eyes. It's like you're a completely different person. Eric forced a chuckle. I guess I just loosened up? Felix didn't look convinced, and a nagging feeling settled in Eric's stomach. How much longer could they keep this up before someone truly figured them out? It wasn't just Felix who noticed the shift. Justin had been watching Eric more closely too. He had initially laughed off the awkward moments in practice as a phase, but now something felt off. Dude, Justin muttered to Kai one evening. Has Eric seemed different to you? Kai raised a brow. What, you mean how he actually listens during team meetings now? No, I mean he just seems more reserved. Kai shrugged. People change, man. Maybe Eric's finally using his brain for something. Justin hummed, unconvinced. There was a puzzle here, and he was determined to figure it out. The more time Sam and Eric spent in each other's shoes, the harder it became to ignore the pull between them. It started subtly, longer glances, inside jokes, the warmth of understanding that no one else shared. One night, after another secret training session, they found themselves sitting on the gym floor, exhausted but laughing. You're actually not bad at this? Eric admitted, nudging Sam's shoulder. Sam huffed. I'd be better if my body wasn't so. He caught himself before saying yours out loud. Uncooperative. Eric smirked. Hey, at least I haven't been completely failing at your classes. Felix even said I was doing well. Sam tilted his head. You like it, don't you? What? The challenge. The problem solving. AI. Eric hesitated, then sighed. Yeah, I guess I do. It's kind of fun. Sam smiled. You should tell people that. Eric scoffed. Like you should tell people you enjoy playing basketball? Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, the air between them felt charged. Neither spoke. Neither moved. Then, just as quickly, Eric clapped his hands together. Welp, that's enough self-reflection for one night. Sam nodded hastily. Yeah, let's get out of here. As they walked off in different directions, both tried to ignore the lingering warmth in their chests. Chapter 7, The Breaking Point. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of confusion, adaptation, and, most disturbingly, growing emotions. Sam and Eric had successfully fooled everyone, maintaining their swapped identities without arousing suspicion. But something else had started creeping in. Something neither of them wanted to admit. Sam had always considered himself logical, pragmatic. Feelings were things to be managed, understood, and categorized. But lately, his thoughts had become a tangled mess. He found himself looking forward to basketball practice. Not because he was improving, but because of Eric's lingering presence in his mind. The way Eric had supported him, pushed him past his limits, made him laugh even when he was struggling. It was unsettling. And Eric wasn't faring much better. As Sam, he had started to appreciate things he never thought he would. The late-night study sessions, the quiet moments of concentration, the way Sam's world felt structured and yet oddly comfortable. And more than that, he had started to appreciate Sam himself. The way his sharp mind worked, the way he tried so hard, the way he cared even when he pretended not to. Neither of them wanted to admit it. So they did what any emotionally confused young adults would do. They avoided each other. It didn't take long for their friends to notice. Yo, what's up with you? Brian nudged Eric in Sam's body, as they sat in their elective class. You've been all weird lately. One minute you're completely focused, next minute you're spacing out. I'm fine, Eric muttered, flipping through Sam's notes. He tried to concentrate, but his mind wasn't cooperating. Brian narrowed his eyes. Fine, huh? You sure this isn't about a person? Eric stiffened. What? No, that's ridiculous. Meanwhile, Kai was watching Sam, in Eric's body, during practice. Dude, you okay? He asked, handing him a water bottle. You've been weirdly distracted lately. Usually, you're hyper-focused when you're improving at something. But today you missed 3 easy shots. Sam forced a chuckle. Just tired, I guess. Kai wasn't convinced. You know, if something's on your mind, you can talk about it. Sam hesitated, gripping the water bottle a little too tightly. It's nothing. Kai hummed in thought but didn't push further. Despite their efforts to ignore the problem, it didn't go away. It only built up until one evening, when they found themselves alone in their usual empty classroom, the air between them charged with unspoken tension. Eric leaned against the desk, arms crossed. So, what's your deal? Sam shot him a glare. My deal? You're the one avoiding me. I'm not avoiding you. You're the one acting all weird. Maybe because I've had to deal with you acting weird first, Sam shot back. Eric let out a frustrated sigh. This is stupid. Yeah. Well, everything about this situation is stupid. A heavy silence fell between them. They weren't just talking about the soul swap anymore. Finally, Eric exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Look, let's just forget it. Sam finished for him, voice unreadable. Eric hesitated. Yeah. Sam looked at him for a long moment before nodding stiffly. Fine. Neither of them believed it. But for now, it was easier than admitting the truth. Chapter 8. The Confession and the Kiss. The tension from their previous argument still lingered, but as Sam and Eric sat across from each other in their usual empty classroom, an unspoken understanding settled between them. The silence wasn't hostile. It was heavy, charged with something neither of them had the courage to name yet. Sam sighed, rubbing his temples. This whole thing has been exhausting. Eric leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Tell me about it. He hesitated before adding, avoiding each other didn't exactly help either. Sam let out a humorless chuckle. No, it didn't. He exhaled sharply, finally looking Eric in the eyes. I was scared. Still am. Eric shifted in his seat, tapping his fingers against the desk. Of what? Sam hesitated. The words felt too big, too heavy to voice. He had always prided himself on being rational, but nothing about what he felt for Eric made sense in the way equations and formulas did. Of what it means if we... Eric swallowed hard. If we like this? Like us? Sam looked away, but Eric wasn't letting him off the hook. You're not the only one, you know, Eric said, softer this time. I've been thinking about it too, and I hate admitting it, but the idea of going back to how things were before, it doesn't feel right anymore. Sam's head snapped back toward him. You feel that too? Eric let out a nervous laugh. Yeah. Terrifying, isn't it? Sam's breath hitched. It was terrifying. But hearing Eric say it out loud, acknowledging that he wasn't alone in this, made it a little less so. A slow, uncertain silence stretched between them. But this time, neither of them looked away. Eric was the first to break it. So, what do we do about it? Sam's heart pounded. He knew what he wanted. For the first time in his life, he wasn't thinking about expectations, about what was logical or practical. He was thinking about what felt right, what felt real. So he reached forward, closing the space between them. Eric's breath hitched as Sam's fingers curled around his wrist, anchoring them in the moment. Then, cautiously, almost like testing an unspoken theory, Sam leaned in. Eric didn't pull away. Their lips met, tentative at first, then deeper as the weight of all their unspoken words melted into the kiss. It wasn't a grand, cinematic moment. It was quiet, gentle, yet undeniably real. When they finally pulled apart, Eric exhaled shakily. Okay, he murmured, almost dazed. That happened. Sam let out a breathless chuckle. Yeah, it did. And for the first time since this whole chaos began, they both felt something close to peace. Chapter 9, Returning to Their Bodies. The morning sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting golden streaks across the room. Sam groaned as he blinked awake, the familiar scent of his own pillow filling his senses. His body felt right, not just familiar, completely his. A jolt of realization surged through him as he shot up, eyes darting around the room. His actual dorm room. Eric sat up just as abruptly in his own bed, his heart pounding. He quickly grabbed his phone from the nightstand and checked the screen. Eric stared back at him from the lock screen. Not Sam. Him. He fumbled to sit up properly, running a hand through his hair in disbelief. A moment of silence stretched between them, miles apart yet connected by the same impossible realization. Neither wasted a second. Sam bolted out of bed, grabbing his phone and immediately dialing Eric. The line barely rang twice before it connected. "Are you?" Sam began, his voice breathless. "Back?" "Yeah." Eric answered, equally dazed. "Are you?" "Yeah." Another pause. They were both awake in their respective dorms, in their respective bodies. It was over. "Meet me. Now," Sam said, not even phrasing it as a question. Eric was already halfway through pulling on a hoodie. Empty classroom. 5 minutes. They met in the same empty classroom that had become their secret meeting spot. For once, neither of them was struggling with pretending to be the other. No awkward stances, no forced mannerisms. Just themselves. Sam exhaled, rubbing his temple as if trying to massage away the absurdity of it all. "It's really over." Eric nodded slowly, leaning against the desk. "Guess the universe finally decided we learned our lesson." Sam huffed a small laugh. If that's what this was about. They fell into thoughtful silence. The desks, the whiteboard, even the faint scent of chalk. Everything was the same, and yet, nothing felt the same. They had lived as each other. They had walked in each other's shoes, felt each other's struggles. And more than that, Eric glanced at Sam, hesitating before asking, "So, what now? Do we just pretend it never happened?" Sam frowned, thoughtful. "Could you?" Eric sighed, crossing his arms. "Not a chance." Sam's lips pressed together. He could feel something lingering, something unspoken. "We saw ourselves in that window. That's what started all of this. And the moment we finally accepted everything, we switched back." "You think that's just coincidence?" Eric's gaze softened. "I don't know. Maybe fate has a weird sense of humor." Sam gave a small chuckle. "Or maybe it just wanted us to stop running from ourselves." A comfortable silence settled between them. They both knew their lives wouldn't just return to how they were before. They couldn't. They had changed too much. Eric stretched, his usual smirk returning. "Well, I guess this means I don't have to suffer through another calculus lecture." Sam scoffed. "And I won't have to embarrass myself on the basketball court." Eric nudged his shoulder. "You weren't that bad." Sam arched a brow. "Liar." Eric just grinned. "Okay, you were terrible. But, you tried." Sam rolled his eyes but couldn't hide his smile. As they stood there, no longer bound by swapped identities, an unspoken question lingered in the air. "Do you think the window's magic is really gone?" Eric finally voiced. Sam considered it. "I don't know, but I think it gave us what we needed." Eric hummed in agreement. "Maybe that's what fate does. It messes with us just enough to push us in the right direction." Sam glanced at him, a small knowing smile forming. "And what's the right direction?" Eric met his gaze, something warm and certain in his eyes. "Guess we'll have to find out. Together." Neither of them had all the answers, but for the first time they weren't afraid of the question. Epilogue. A new beginning. The air on campus felt different. Not because the seasons had changed, but because they had. Sam and Eric sat together on the outdoor bleachers, watching the basketball team practice. Sam, no longer just an observer, twirled a basketball between his fingers. Eric, beside him, had a laptop open, scrolling through AI research papers. It had become a new routine for them, one that felt surprisingly natural. "I still can't believe you willingly signed up for a sports science elective," Eric teased, nudging Sam's shoulder. Sam smirked, tossing the ball up and catching it. "And I still can't believe you actually enjoy learning about AI." Eric rolled his eyes but didn't deny it. "Felix is a good teacher. Turns out, problem-solving is kind of fun." Sam gave him a knowing look. "Told you." Their gazes met, and for a moment, neither spoke. The unspoken words between them lingered. What they had been through, how much they had changed, and what they had become to each other. Eric let out a breath and rubbed the back of his neck. So, we never really defined what we are now. Sam tilted his head slightly. Do we have to? Eric hesitated, then shook his head with a small laugh. No, I guess not. But, in case anyone asks. Sam rolled his eyes but smiled. Then, with a quiet certainty, he reached out and laced their fingers together. Then let's make it clear. Eric's breath hitched slightly, but then he grinned, his grip tightening around Sam's. Yeah, let's. The world around them continued as usual, students walking past, the sounds of sneakers squeaking on the court, the distant chatter of friends. But for them, everything had shifted. They were no longer just the scholar and the athlete, nor were they two people trapped in each other's lives. They were Sam and Eric together, and that was more than enough.